some of the entrepreneurs that you know made their greatest strides during times of turbulence, strife, challenges, grief, meltdowns, whatever you want to call it. So if you can stay true to that North Star and keep focused, keep a positive attitude, I am so happy and grateful now that I can and do create my own economy.
Welcome to the In Factor, conversations with entrepreneurs who started, stumbled, and succeeded. I'm Rebecca White, and I'm very excited to welcome Papi DiNuzzo to the show today. Papi is a wealth advisor, a mindset coach, a best-selling author, and an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and I'm really excited to hear about his story, and I know you'll enjoy it too. So, Papi, thank you for joining me.
Oh, Dr. White, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I think I met you through one of my colleagues at the University of Tampa, and he came back from maybe a Million Cups or another event, I think, where you both were, Josh Ray, and he said, you got to have this guy on your podcast. So I'm excited to learn about your story. You're located here in the Tampa Bay area as well. And as I mentioned, you've got an extensive entrepreneurial background. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about how this all started. Like, where are you from? How did you become an entrepreneur? Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? And what got you started on this path?
Yeah, Doctor, I think you'll enjoy the story. I'll try to give you the summary. My grandparents came over from Italy and Poland, respectively, and I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, born and raised here. I have a second home in Tampa, and I spend a good bit of time down there as well. And grandparents came over, my Polish grandpa from Warsaw, Poland, my Italian grandfather from Naples, Italy, and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is famous for steel mills. And they worked in those steel mills for over 40 years, respectively, in Midland, Pennsylvania and Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, right outside of Pittsburgh. And my dad worked in a steel mill for 25 years. Of course, his dad, as I said, worked in a steel mill for over 40 years, as well as my Polish grandfather. And he worked in a mill for 25 years, said, hey, I saw what my dad did, and, an entire life of working in a steel mill is not for me. And he always had an entrepreneurial flair. So when he was still working in the mill, he bought a small little store. So my entrepreneurial career, Doctor, started probably when I was 7 or 8 years old. He thought it was a great idea. Me and my brother weren't so happy about it, but we started catching the school bus. I go into the store at 7 a.m. in the morning and putting away the bread order, the milk order, the newspaper order, and started doing that. So that was my initial. It sort of gets in your blood, so to speak, or in your DNA, an entrepreneur. And then he bought a restaurant after that, and he quit his job at the mill, worked in the restaurant for a number of years. And I'll get into it in a little bit, but that was really the beginning of my entrepreneurial spirit. My father passed away in his early 50s, and that really changed everything from the restaurant and another business that he had gotten into. And when he passed away, we had in today's dollars about $2 million in debt. So I dropped out of college and my brother dropped out of college and helped my mom because she was signed personally on everything. I told him, I said, we've never failed for lack of effort. We'll never fail for lack of effort here, but it's going to be about a 15-year project. And the restaurant was open 7 days a week also. I said, it's going to be about a 15-year project for us to dig out of this debt so we can move on with our lives. It ended up taking about 13 and a half years, a little bit under 14, but we did. And then that's what led me to my next phase. And let me know whenever you want me to go into the wealth management area.
Sure. So great story. Pittsburgh. I lived in Cincinnati, but I also lived in Morgantown. So Pittsburgh, I know well. And actually Pittsburgh's a lot like Cincinnati. A lot of immigrants came to both communities, a lot of hardworking people. And so, it's really amazing. Those role models and those early years have a big impact on us. I do have to ask you about you. I know you list your name as PJ and Papi. So where does the Papi come from?
Yeah, it started from my first grandchild 11 years ago. Whenever she was born, they said, how do you want to be known? What do you want to be called? And it just popped in. I'll talk a little bit about manifesting, the law of attraction, everything. My subconscious mind immediately said Papi, and it said spell it P-A-P-I. And I'm like, okay, that's what my intuition told me. So it's been for the last 11 or 12 years or so. And also more, we get in a little bit with the mindset coaching that I do. That just took off right away with people calling me Papi, with the mindset coaching, manifesting the law of attraction, my most recent book, that for some reason that everybody's on that frequency. So I've just run with that.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So you have a home in Pittsburgh and a home here in Florida in Tampa Bay,
Yes.
and you've had your wealth management company, I think, for, did I see 34 years? A
Yes. Yes.
while.
Started. Yeah. So I started actually with my initial meetings in the restaurant, and I was meeting people who were giving me money to manage, et cetera, in the restaurant, like in between lunch and dinner. People come in and say, okay, let me have a meeting with you, and slowly made the transition out of there. But I started that in 1989 with $0, the wealth management practice. And today we're at approximately $1 billion. And we've grown that all organically, no buyouts, no tuck-ins, mergers, anything. So out of the tens and tens of thousands of firms in the United States, we are, I mean, it's not like it's a contest or anything, but just to put in perspective, of anybody who started out with zero and has grown to $1 billion, I don't know of another firm who's grown from zero into $1 billion practice. And those are some of the sort of secrets and strategies I love to share with the audience today.
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question. So,
Okay.
how does one go about doing that? So, take us through. You were a relatively young man when you
Yes.
started that business. So, let's start with sort of where did you get the confidence to step out on your own and make that transition as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things sort of being thrown into the deep end of the pool, doctor, in that when my father passed away, I was in my early 20s. Within within a handful of years of him passing away, I had 3 young children. I was married. I mean, there was a lot of pressure brought to bear, so to speak, and you get thrown into the deep end of the pool and you either sort of learn to swim or you don't. So, the restaurant business is a lot of hard work and application. I mean, it's a hands-on business. The super majority of your expenses are either human beings, human capital, individuals, living, breathing people, and or perishable products, food, etc. So it's a high hands-on business, especially an independent restaurant. So that was very hands-on. And then when I made the transition into the wealth management practice, there were a few key milestones. When I started the practice in 1989, one of the things I'd heard, my dad was 100% Italian, and nothing negative about the stereotype, but he was that stereotypical mercurial temper. He was one of the youngest in a family of 13. And I'd hear him on the phone yelling at his stockbroker. Once he started to save a little bit of money, he says, I don't care what it is. You tell me to sell and take my gains. You tell me to sell and cut my losses. But all I know is I got less money than I gave you 3 years ago. And I'm like thinking to myself, I've always been good at numbers. I said, man, there's got to be a different way of doing this. So I started studying, and I said, whenever I launched my practice in 1989, 99% or 99.9% of the world, as you can remember, doctor, was on the commission basis. I mean, it was an institutionalized system. It was commission. It was regulated, rather not institutionalized. It was a regulated industry. And if you want to go out and buy 100 shares of IBM, you were paying the rack rate, like $350 commission to buy 100 shares of IBM, no matter what. So I said, Congress passed a law in 1989, maybe late 1988, that you could be independent. And it was a perfect alignment of stars. I said, this is how I'm going to launch my business. So I was one of the first 300 or 400 fee only registered investment advisors in the country. So I said, I'm not going to accept any commissions. I'm going to have my interests perfectly aligned with my client's best interest. There won't be any inherent conflict of interest. I won't place in the client's account anything that I won't buy in my own account, or even more pressure on you. If you're managing your mother's money like I was, I won't put anything in my client's account that I don't put in my mom's. So the real big point to start off with was the fee only, as far as aligning my interests with the clients and us being together. Then the next one was when I started doctor, was basing it on planning. At that point in time, especially in the 80s and even into the 90s and 2000s, there's a lot of machismo and bravado in the investment world. And I can invest better than you. My returns are better than yours. Watch my smoke, etc. And I noticed early on that the value added by a good to great advisor was on the planning side, true wealth planning, financial planning, tax planning and tax preparation, risk management, risk planning. So that is what I focused on. Went back to school, got my CPA, got a master's in tax law, went back, got my MBA as well, concentrated in economics. So, really to align myself in the best manner with the client's best interest. I set it up with no conflict. It was a little conflict of interest, actually zero conflict of interest, because I was not getting paid more for selling an apple versus a banana. It was just fee only. My salary, our income at the practice is directly tied to our clients' accounts. If my clients' accounts go up, I get a raise at the end of the next quarter. If they don't go up, I don't get a raise. So there's a direct alignment. So I tied it into the planning. So if you treat your clients like family, if you have your heart invested in it, if you do things exactly like you would do for your family, if you do it based off of planning first and foremost, and even before investments, it would be investment planning, you start to grow and you start to get folks by word of mouth. And again, the proof's in the pudding. Not only can I say it's growing from $0, doctor, to $1 billion in assets under management, I'm in an extended suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm actually about halfway between Pittsburgh and Youngstown, Ohio. So in plain English, save anybody from going to look at a map, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, we're in the extended suburbs. Other firms, there's only, I think, out of the tens and tens of thousands of firms, I know last year in the ranking, we came in like around number 400, I think. There's only a few hundreds of firms who are $1 billion or more. So for us to do this out in the middle of nowhere, these are the key ingredients. And what I'll get to in a little bit as far as manifesting, any of you can imagine when I sort of crack the code on that. So all these basic inherent alignments of the stars, do what's in your client's best interest, provide the best services possible, treat them like family. So now we maintained about a 97, 98% retention rate over time. And when you have a high retention rate, your clients are referring family, friends, and relatives to you, and you get a organic growth model set up with internal referrals.
Yeah, you mentioned organic growth and word of mouth, and I was just going to ask about your marketing strategy, and I guess how has that changed over the years from, or has it changed?
Yeah. Yeah, it's everything that we do, doctor, is really David versus Goliath. And we're David, of course, in every scenario. And, you know, the firms that are out there are the Merrill Lynch's, and there's nothing being negative said about anybody. This is Merrill Lynch, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, all these enormous behemoths with wonderful brands and market reach and everything else. And then there's the little RIA, independent RIAs such as myself. So our marketing budget for an entire year would be maybe something that Fidelity or Charles Schwab would spend in less than one day on television ads alone. So it's really that organic from the ground up. It's, you know, someone told me, there was a consultant I had years ago, and I was debating what name am I going to hang on the door when they say, so to speak, you hang a shingle. And he told me, he says, PJ, you're going to live or die with your name. He said, the best thing you could do is put your name on the door. You are your brand is you. You'll live or die with that, with how you please and impress people. So it was DiNuzzo was on the name from day one. And we were more literal years ago as DiNuzzo Index Advisors. I got impugned, lambasted and everything else, because when I started in the late 80s and early 90s, there was only a very small single-digit percentage of the market that was invested in efficient market theory. So that was another reason for our success. We don't try to outsmart the stock market. Vanguard picked on that. Mr. Jack Bogle picked up on the research that he received from the folks that I work with, the Dimensional Fund Advisors, the research that came out of the University of Chicago and all the Nobel Prize winners about efficient market theory. So the rest is history. Vanguard is now the largest mutual fund company on earth. Primarily, the largest mutual funds on earth are these indexes, and people are looking every year. How did the index do? How did I do in my portfolio? Well, the index beat me. After 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, maybe 15 years, you say, hey, I'm going to stop fighting and I'm going to join him. So let me just invest in the market. And then you want to diversify US versus international, emerging markets, bonds, et cetera, and put that on the correct risk profile for your age, your withdrawals, your assets, liabilities, income, expenses. So we do a very highly customized approach with our DiNuzzo Financial Wellness Life Plan that we customize for our clients.
Yeah. So as I was listening to you talk about how this business evolved, one of the things I heard is that you really focused on the people and coaching and understanding them in their life plans and their goals and trying to customize basically what you're doing. So is that what led you into the mindset coaching? Is that how you found yourself there?
Yeah, I guess it would be that would be it. And that was a great point, Doctor. And I know you and Professor Ray do a tremendous job at the University of Tampa at the business school. But isn't it funny how many people in business don't really pay attention to their clients? Suzanne just had an episode earlier where she was going through one of these phone trees, so to speak, when she got in the organization. And she and I were just talking. If any executive or manager at all from that company, just call your own company and try to purchase the service that you're selling. I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, you're not paying very close attention to your end client. So, you know, if you can have some humility and just be objective and say, I'm going to listen to my clients. And then you just follow that. I mean, it's a living, breathing, fluid situation. And the market's changed over time. It was mostly individual stocks. I'm of that age that when I got into business, there was a lot of individual stocks. We weren't doing that. We went into the indexing efficient market theory right away, but it was mostly individual stocks. Then it went into mutual funds. Now it's gone into ETFs. So, the market changes and you need to be nimble and flow with the market. But if you're following your clients, if you're keeping an ear to the ground, I don't think you have any challenge with that, because you need to follow the bouncing ball, so to speak. So what happened when I first started, Doctor, was I had no minimum when I first started. I had $0 in assets under management. And the first client that I ever signed up gave me $2,000. That was the IRA limit at the time. I started to practice back in 1989. And I was very grateful for that. That I said, hey, somebody loves me. They gave me $2,000 and there was no minimum. Then as we grew, so today we're approximately $1 billion in assets under management, close to 3,000 accounts, close to 1,000 households. And as we've grown over the years, I needed to get more organized. So my first minimum, I had a minimum of $100,000. Then I had a minimum of $250,000, then $500,000, then $1 million. So our minimum at the practice now is $2 million. And what's happened, long story short, Doctor, is that I've always wanted to give back. When I got into this business, I think a big part of my success is I got into it to help people. It started with helping my dad and then helping my mom. And then I just transitioned that type of help I was providing to them and my family members out to the public at large. So that was my goal, to take this gift that I have with numbers and analysis and planning and transfer that and share that with my fellow brothers and sisters. So I started to get uncomfortable a number of years back, Professor, that I had grown out of that original market. I think of myself, I mentioned my dad had 13 brothers and sisters, and I love all of them dearly. God bless them. But if they were all 13 alive, all 13 together combined could not meet my current minimum. So I started to feel really bad about that, to be honest. I said, I got in this business to help people, and now I can't help as many people as I can. I've got this minimum, which we need with the level of planning that we're doing, and overhead. You're the expert at that. Overhead and fixed expenses and variable expenses per each client, what it costs us to deliver our value or our value model. So I said, what can I do to give back? And that's sort of what's brought us to today. Is I said, I want to be able to help my fellow brothers and sisters who don't have anything. So when I went back and took a real good look at everything, and I identified, I said, I have manifested everything that we all are enjoying today in our lives, that we're experiencing today in our lives, is a manifestation of our thoughts and our feelings. We've brought this to us. We've attracted it. A Buddha from however many thousands and thousands of years ago said, you become what you think, you attract what you feel, and you create what you imagine. So this isn't Papi DiNuzzo speaking. I can cite individual after individual. So when I went back and sort of reverse engineered thing, and once I got on this frequency, no pun intended, Professor, I said, okay, now I understand exactly how to manifest, and I want to teach this to my fellow brothers and sisters. So through DiNuzzo Private Wealth, we have a charitable community outreach, and where I go out into communities. I was just in downtown Cleveland with a inner city group last weekend, and teaching them and talking with anyone who will listen. Preferably, I go through not-for-profit organizations on how to manifest anything you can imagine. And what's funny about it, Doctor, is one of the books that started me on my journey decades and decades ago is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Sure. So it's funny when people say to me, Doctor, they'll say, Papi, PJ, this stuff is woo-woo. I'll say, woo-woo. I would consider Andrew Carnegie to be in a tie with, or not if, the all-time #1 entrepreneur in the history of the United States. He came here from Scotland. He came into Pittsburgh, so I know a lot about him. Yeah, and sure. He started with zero and grew a net worth to, in today's dollars, $400 billion. $400 billion. It's mind-boggling. And he credits every dollar that he ever accumulated to exactly what we're talking about, that he manifested it through the law of attraction. So that's the #1 entrepreneur. Thomas Edison credits the super majority of every invention he ever had. How powerful is he with his reputation? He's called, Thomas Edison's nickname is quote unquote the inventor. Okay. So that's how powerful his track record, his resume is. He credits the super majority of everything he created. So my book that I wrote, my 6th book, is Manifest Anything You Can Imagine. And it's an easier to me coach and teach version of Think and Grow Rich. I met so many people in my life, myself included, said, man, this is wonderful what's in here, but it's like sort of really heavy. and I can't take it and internalize it and put it to work, etc. So what I do is coaching this now. If people talk about something being woo, I would say again, Professor, that this book, Think and Grow Rich, over 100 million of our fellow brothers and sisters have purchased this book. It's estimated that over 300 million of our fellow brothers and sisters have read this book. It's also estimated that this book has created more millionaires than any other book in history. So that's why I was excited about being on your show today. You're an expert in business and entrepreneurship and folks running businesses. So I would just tell folks to keep an open mind. Now, I think one of the most quantitative people I can think of, and I'll just quote a couple real quick. I think of Nikola Tesla, and he was a genius on scale with Albert Einstein. And the quote that I love from Nikola Tesla is, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. That's Nikola Tesla. That's not Papi DiNuzzo speaking. Albert Einstein walked out of a presentation, and a woman came up to him and she said, Mr. Einstein, I think you're the smartest person on earth, and I have a couple of young children. I would love for you to help me and give me and provide me with some wisdom on how I can make my children as intelligent as possible. And Albert Einstein answered her. He said, if you would like your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be very intelligent, read them a lot of fairy tales. He was talking about using your imagination. When you use your imagination, that's what set apart Andrew Carnegie, Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla. Everything starts up above us. We use our imagination, and our thoughts create everything. So everything, Professor, is created twice. First in my mind, your mind, one of our fellow brothers or sisters' minds, then the physical object back of it is completed. You listen to any business person we've ever talked to, and they were daydreaming. They were thinking about, I'm going to create this. Nobody has it yet. I don't know why no one has done this. So they're using their imagination to add a thought. Now, I say also, to qualify this, Professor, that I only offer suggestions. So I say what I'm talking about today, for any listeners, these are just suggestions, but I suggest to folks also, write down on a piece of paper, a big H, below that a big W, below that a big H, health, wealth, and happiness, and give yourself a grade. What is my grade? How am I grading myself on my health? What is the grade I give myself on my wealth? What is the grade I give myself my happiness? And happiness could be career, relationships, love, whatever it may be. And I find, doctor, that out in the field, all across the country, I just taught a class in Kenya, Nakuru, Kenya, a couple of weeks ago, talking to folks in the Philippines, doesn't matter where we're at, that the average person has been at this for 20, 40, 60, 80 years, says, Papi, I'm not so happy with my grades here. I mean, I wish I had A's all across the board, but no, they're not. I'm not so happy with that now. And I would just ask my fellow brothers and sisters, would you entertain that there may be a different way of looking at this for you to succeed? And my suggestion is that we live in a thought world within a thought universe, and it's the powers of your thoughts. You know, more of a mainstream book, I think of, doctor, and I read a lot of books, as you can see in the background, but more mainstream book is Norman Vincent Peale from a few years ago, The Power of Positive Thinking. So just more of like a middle of the road. You know, what kicked this whole episode off was James Allen with As a Man Thinketh. So this was one in the late 1800s. So Andrew Carnegie was having a panic attack, Professor, in the late 1800s. He said, I've accumulated my entire net worth of, this would be 400 billion approximate today's dollars. He said, doing things a very specific way, and they don't teach it in school. There's no books on it. You can't read about it in a newspaper. And he says, on top of this, I know a number of my fellow billionaires, friends of mine, have done it the same exact way, that they've done it the same exact way through the law of attraction. And Andrew Carnegie's famous quote was, any idea that is held in the mind that is either feared or revered. So our thoughts, either good or bad, that's either feared or revered, will begin immediately to clothe itself in the most appropriate and available form possible. So I just offer this as a suggestion for folks. And I notice, I say growing up also, I know if I didn't hear Michael Jordan use the word visualize 1,000 times or 10,000 times, and I grew up, and I'm showing my age, but I mean, he was, and he still sort of is, but you know, considered the GOAT, the greatest of all time. But that visualization, when you talk to CEOs, talk to entrepreneurs, I coached a young gentleman, me and his dad were buddies, and his name's Johnny Geiger, and he has a not exotic, but like a custom shoe business for tennis shoes. And we had an AAU basketball team in Pittsburgh, and Johnny was on the team, and he was drawing between every game. He's drawing tennis shoes, and he's putting images on them. And people are like, Johnny, what are you doing? He's like, oh, tennis shoes. I just love them. And you could design better ones. They're like, Johnny, and he was from a very low income. I mean, the Geiger family was self-made people. I respect them tremendously. He didn't come from any privileged background. And just go now look up John Geiger and his tennis shoe business. He just won, to the best of my knowledge, a major lawsuit against Nike because he's starting to get that kind of traction. He's on their radar screen, but it started with his imagination. He visualized this and he thought about that. So everything's created twice. He created in his mind, and then he went to someone and said, okay, now I want you to build this shoe for me. I want you to develop this for me, so to put it together. But yeah, so that's what I talk about. So what I love is, Professor, that I do talk to business folks, but also that I can now help any of my fellow brothers and sisters who don't even have anything. These are folks in the Philippines or in Kenya and Liberia, Africa, who don't have anything. And I can start to give them hope, inspiration, that there is abundance and peace of mind available for them, that they can start to 10x their life. They can start to set goals and achieve those goals, that they have everything, this creative power that they have within them. They have all the tools they need to be able to dramatically improve their life and manifest anything they can imagine.
Wow, there's a lot in there. First of all, it is very obvious your enthusiasm and passion for what you do. And I think passion can be, you talked about the young man with his tennis shoes who turned that into an amazing business. The passion is a lot of times what drives us, but I'm really curious. So there's so much in there that you talked about. When you talk about manifestation and all of the books that you brought up, my mind, when you were talking about, how all of our, everything starts as a thought, was the as a man thinketh, because I read that myself. And it's very interesting because so many of these principles have been around forever, but but your goal in your writing your books was to put it into a very simple model that anyone could access. So I have to ask you, I hope everybody will go out and buy the book, but talk to us about, you talked about it starts first in our mind. And I think it was Sir Richard Branson who said that he believed that what set entrepreneurs apart was curiosity. And so having a curious mind may be a starting point, but I'm curious about this model that you've created, taking all of the wisdom from, hundreds of years of writing and experience and putting it into something that's very simple. And so how did you do that? And what is there part of that message maybe that you can share with us? And again, I encourage everybody to buy the book, but what is that model that we need to know to make it to manifest?
Yes. And one thing I would state also, this is even for the entrepreneurs in the audience, which I know you have a tremendous audience that follows you, Doctor, professionally at the university and also on your podcast. There's nothing less woo about laws. So these are universal laws. So these are, I call it the law of energy, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So energy comes into form, goes through form, and comes out of form over and over and over. The law of increase, the law of as above, so below, the law of vibration, the law of attraction. So we're standing on a piece of concrete, or we've got a metal desk or anything in front of us. We think it's a physical solid object, but no, it's vibrating. That's what Nikola Tesla talked about, Albert Einstein. Energy is the key to the universe, and it vibrates, and it vibrates at a frequency. So we live in a non-linguistic, non-verbal universe. That's how we communicate at the highest level. So we want to open ourselves up. I'd encourage anyone to read about Thomas Edison, how he would fall asleep sitting in a chair with two sort of iron shot puts in each hand and two metal pie pans on the floor. And as soon as he fell asleep, his muscles would relax. Those metal balls would fall in the pie pans. It would waken him up. And he had a note and pen, a paper and pencil right next to his chair. He was in that close of contact with his subconscious mind. He got that idea. That's how he said that he created most of the inventions that he created, is how it come through him. He got very close to his subconscious mind. So we're talking about laws of the universe, law of cause and effect. which is one of the greatest laws in the universe. So you understand how these universal laws work, and that's what we're relating here to bring this to our fellow brothers and sisters. So if I said a simple formula, and we could think of it, no pun intended, but up above our head, Professor, is we're thinking, and that's where we want to use our imagination, and we're using our thoughts. So we think we're using our imagination, and we want to identify. What I coach up, doctor, is a 10x goal. So I'll say you've got a no goal, KNOW. So let's say we're talking to someone at the end of the year, and they're talking to us, they say, I'm a successful entrepreneur, and my goal for next year is I want to increase my revenue by 10%. Well, you and I could say, maybe I think that's something maybe you can do, KNOW, that you can do. And what if they said, well, I think I can increase my sales by 20%. I think that's something that's a think goal. I think I can do it. But increasing something by 10x, 10 times that value, now you're getting your conscious mind out of the way. The only way you can get there, and this is peer-reviewed science that I'm talking about here, the human subconscious mind is where 95% of everything occurs in your life. All your successes, everything else, 95% is in your subconscious mind, only 5% in your conscious mind, which most of us are using way too much. There's a couple famous people. One calls our conscious mind our stinking thinking. Dolores Cannon was very famous. She called our conscious mind Mr. Stupid. And again, that's Dolores Cannon. She was very famous, but that was one that always made me chuckle. So let's get that conscious mind out of the way, and let's access all power of all time. So let's use our imagination and come up with, the way I always think of this, doctor, is I tell folks, let's go online even and look at people, these world-class dominoes champions, where you knock over one domino and it knocks over 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000. So let's find out one domino in life. What's most important to you? Health, wealth, happiness, relationships, love, partner, whatever it may be. And let's pick your top goal. And what domino, if you were to knock it over, would knock over the most in your life? So we're going to look at that as your 10x goal. We want a big, robust goal that's going to 10x your life in one way, shape, or form. So we think about that. And as we think about that, we identify that as our goal, and that is our want. So if we think about, doctor, there's a big round circle around our head, there's a stick figure. When I ask most people, I say, what is your mind? Most people say, Pappy, I think it's my brain. I'll say, well, our brain's no more of our mind than our nose or our toes is. Our mind is comprised of 3 elements. And I think of a stick figure, a big round circle around our head with a horizontal line, and put a C in the top half of the circle for conscious mind, put an SC in the bottom half of the circle for subconscious mind, one little line here and a small circle down below for our body, and two lines up for arms and hands, 2 lines down for legs and feet. So it comes into our conscious mind as a want. We say, I want this. I want to start a shoe manufacturing company. That's what I want. That's my big goal. And then if we want it bad enough, Professor, it goes down to our subconscious mind, our subjective mind, our feeling mind, and it becomes a desire. And if we desire it enough, there's vibrations that start. Those vibrations come down in through our body and come out. And you've heard people will say, man, I got to go and talk to Joe, but I don't know. The last time I talked to him, I only talked to him for 5 minutes, but I was wiped out. I had to go sit at my desk. Like I had no energy for the next 2 hours from the conversation I had with whoever the person is full name. Also, you'll say, hey, I like being around that person. They're upbeat. Like you mentioned, Mr. Branson, who's a phenomenal entrepreneur. I don't know if I've ever seen him, Professor, without a smile on his face. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always upbeat. He's got a skip in his walk and everything else. So, hey, I want to be around somebody like that. They've got positive energy. Like they're elevating my game. So it starts with our thoughts. It comes down to, it goes from our thoughts to our feelings, comes into our body. We take action. What comes out of us is results. And we're literally, there was the Russian scientist, I forget his name, I think 90 or 100 years ago, figured out how to take a picture which showed the energy coming out of a human body. So there are vibrations, and animals pick up on this. I mean, I'm a dog lover. I've had up to 4 dogs at one time in my life. Dogs are reading this. They pick up on your vibration, your vibe. That's how the whole universe works. So we're sending this signal out. You can even talk about, what is it, the book Blink, and a lot of people use that as a business reference, where human beings are making a decision on another human being in a split second. So a lot of times this is tied into, it's this vibration. It's this vibration we're sending out, and you match up with it or not. So if you want to contact someone, I'm working on a project that it's come through me that I am to reach out to Morgan Freeman. So I tell folks, think about your cell phone. Do I want to try to contact Morgan Freeman to get on a vibration that generates a frequency way up above my head? Or do I want to put my cell phone on my floor and try to call from down there from a very low negative, it's either angry, or I'm in the doldrums, or I'm despondent, or I'm jealous, or whatever. No, you want to send out the highest frequency possible. And that's what I said. Buddha even quoted thousands of years ago, you attract what you feel, you will become what you think, you will create what you imagine. So there's this, and it's a little bit non-intuitive for some real hardcore business folks because they're thinking it's all about, this calculus class that I took at MIT or something, whatever else have you. But Albert Einstein easily is one of my best examples. He was as successful was, he was the ultimate math doctor, so to speak. But his true success was how powerful his imagination was. And you'll just see that again and again. If you look into these bios of these individuals, Professor, over and over again, that imagination, that curiosity that you mentioned, that creativity up above, which flows through our entire body and literally emits a vibration. And folks are on that same vibration. If you need to do a business deal and your vibration up above your head is at a certain level, if that person's in Japan, they're in Australia, they're on the other side of the country, it doesn't matter. They will receive that. And you'll be getting a phone call, an email, an introduction or something, and you'll be put together. You take a look at successful businesses over and over again, and we see that happening over and over again, people being brought together. I just had a meeting, a guy that I could have only imagined meeting just a few weeks, or even say 2 months ago. I could not even imagine meeting this person. Primary residence for him is Fort Lauderdale. My primary is Pittsburgh, secondary Tampa. He's out of the country more than he's in the country. And I just ran into him in downtown Detroit, Michigan last weekend. Just ran into him and had a subsequent conversation. I've got his cell phone number. We're engaging in a conversation. That's literally how it works. If people pay attention to what's going on, you can manifest anything you can imagine. The power, the creative power inside of you and any of us. And I would just say, not to get too deep, but I would just say, Professor, that the creator of all would not say, once you have $10,000 in the bank, I'll start to work with you. Once you own a car, I'll start to work with you. Once you own a house, I'll start to work with you. We have this creative power inside of all of us. All 8 billion plus of our fellow brothers and sisters have this ability inside. And that's what my life's calling is, to inform them, to teach them that they do have it. And then let's get to work on what are the techniques on how you go about it to manifest anything you can imagine.
And interestingly, a lot of there again, so much in what you're talking about there that we could dig into. But one of the things I think that came to mind for me was this concept of serendipity. And
Yeah.
I've seen this happen in my life, and I know you've experienced it as well, because that's kind of what you were talking about. But when something enters our mind, when we set a goal and then it becomes part of our subconscious, we suddenly not only does the universe send us what we need, as you pointed out, but we start to notice it, because there's a lot in the world we don't notice, I think. And
Yes.
when we start to set this goal. So I have to ask you, you've been running businesses for a lot of years, and you've been doing your philanthropic work of coaching and mentoring also. And so you, like I, have been through a lot of ups and downs in the economy and in the world. I find it, a few years back, I was doing research on companies that had developed resilience. I've been very interested in resilience because I've seen a change in a lot of our students, and they are more fragile and less resilient in many instances. Not all of them, but I've seen that kind of a global change in that trend. And so I'm curious about your thoughts. You've been through at least 2 pretty major recessions. We're into a very challenging economic period right now. You've been through 9/11. As you look back over these years, what have you learned about building a resilient business? I think you talk about, when you talk about setting goals and manifesting, sometimes things don't happen immediately. So we have to have a certain level of resilience and perseverance. So what can you share about that topic, about resilience? And do you have any experiences in your own business or life that you could share, where you had to learn some lessons of resilience?
Yes, a school of hard knocks. One thing I was just going to close the thought in my mind, if it's okay with your permission, Professor, is when you mentioned about the serendipity, what we receive, and that's one of the main things that I would alert my fellow brothers and sisters listening to pay attention to. There are no coincidences. There are no synchronicities that are coincidences. There's cause and effect. The cause is divine orchestration, and that is the cause, and the effect is what we think is serendipity, is a synchronicity, is a coincidence. So pay extraordinary attention. Our the forefathers and ancients before us, so to speak, our four brothers and sisters before us, were very in tune to being able to pick up on signs and symbols and nature and things that were out there. We become a lot more insensitive. Now things have come to us through technology in different ways, but pay very close attention. When you mention resilience in this business, especially, when I very first started, and I'm showing my age here, is got started, but there was a savings and loan crisis in the late 1980s.
Sure.
So walked sort of straight into that. And then in the 1990s, long-term capital, and that was almost a complete financial meltdown when long-term capital happened. Then one of the four largest bear markets of all time in 2001, 02, it was referred to as the tech wreck, sort of like what we're going through now in the stock market. You've got a handful of companies or a very small group, and they're at very, very inflated price earnings ratios. And that happened from 1995 to actually until March of 2000, when that came crashing down. So you go through a period when you're in this business and the stock market goes down 50%, 2001, 02. Then we've got 2008. We had 9/11 before that. We had the going through COVID. And in any business, when you've got any entrepreneur, when you're not in control, so to speak, because this is the market, and what you're doing can go down by 20, 30, 40, 50% your revenue, you do need to develop resiliency. Now, what I would state is one of my favorite affirmations, and the power of affirmations is us telling ourselves. So, and when I quote individuals, I mean, Oprah Winfrey's got some phenomenal quotes on this, Professor, as far as when she figured out how to manifest. And I say, Oprah Winfrey has manifested to the tune. She started with zero, and I think she's worth about $3 billion now. Arnold Schwarzenegger, laying in his bed as a child in the goat farms of the hills of Austria, saying, I'm going to be a world-class bodybuilder. Then after that, I'm going to be the #1 actor in Hollywood making the most money. But the same manifesting over and over again with these affirmations that we do to ourselves. Read Steve Harvey's story. Steve Harvey living out of a car, homeless in his 30s. He's worth about $250 million today. So one of my favorite affirmations is, and I say this, Professor, that we've got in one of our conferences, we got a team of about 24 team members for the approximately $1 billion we manage. In one of the conferences, we keep one of the stock channels on at all times. So, what's going on domestically, internationally, bond rates, commodities, gold, you name it, et cetera. So we know what's going on in the world. And I would say approximately for the 35 years I've been in business, there's not been 1 month that I don't walk by that TV, Professor, and someone's saying it's really, really bad. We're either in a recession or we're going to be in a recession. You might lose your job. A quarter or a third or half the people that are going to lose their job. Everything's going to stink. And my response to that is, so we want to cancel before things get in our subconscious mind. We want to, if it's not in line with our core belief of our values, we say, I cancel that. I reject that. And my famous one for that is, I refuse to participate. So other people might be going through a recession, but I refuse to participate. And I would suggest also, Professor, the expert that you are, when you take a look at, and you've seen this, some of the entrepreneurs that made their greatest strides during times of turbulence, strife, challenges, grief, meltdowns, whatever you want to call it. So if you can stay true to that North Star and keep focused, keep a positive attitude, I am so happy and grateful now that I can and do create my own economy. I would argue, and I tell folks, Professor, I just say Oprah Winfrey, Steve Harvey, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whoever the quotes are from, Jim Carrey, whoever they are, I just say we're all human. So I say try to stay away from any human being's flaws from anybody, because some of these people go in, oh, well, this person, I think, they're making a judgment. They have a flaw. Let's just say from a business perspective and what they've done, we all have flaws in us every single day. So we understand that. But just take a look at the essence of what they've accomplished and how they've accomplished it. So that resilience factor that you mentioned is very, very important. And in fact, most of the people, a lot of entrepreneurs' biggest strides have made during these times of challenges. What the universe tells us, Professor, is that in every challenge, in every problem, what we as human beings call challenges and problems, lies the answer. The answer and the solution is in there by law every single time. And even sometimes, occasionally, there's even an extra diamond in there, which will allow you to have a quantum leap forward. So I would say a lot of what we're talking about today, I don't know because I've never met in person, had a conversation over dinner. But a lot of what we're talking about today, Professor, seems like that Elon Musk has a lot of these things going on. Again, I'm not promulgating or suggesting, but I just see like a lot of these traits. You see a lot of these very successful people, and you see the cake that they baked, and the cake has been pulled out of the oven. It's on display for the whole world to see. And you said, hey, there's got to be an awful lot of positive going on in their life for them to get over the hurdles they have and been at this uber successful level that they are.
Yeah. I think that's all great advice. And, it's really interesting to have that approach. I'm not going to participate in the, in the recession. Yeah. I refuse to participate. And, back to your point about the most creative solutions coming out of problems. When I work with entrepreneurs, they quite often say, well, if I had money, that would solve everything. But the reality is too much money too soon is usually a problem because you don't know how to spend it. And instead, when you are forced to look for a solution that's not based in money, that's when you come up with something creative. So, it's really, it's really interesting because I think that your point that, often out of the most challenging times, I had a number of entrepreneurs on my podcast during COVID, and it was really fascinating to see how they pivoted, changed, created new product lines, found new ways to relate to and meet with their customers and sell their products as the world changed. So it's, I think that's all really great advice. So I'm really curious. You talked early on about building your own personal brand, and I had Kevin Harrington on my podcast a few weeks back for the second time. Kevin was one of the first sharks on Shark Tank, and he was talking about. We were talking about digital marketing, and we were talking about the importance of building your brand, in a digital world. And so I'm really curious. I have to ask you about technology. We're living in so much has changed since you and I started our careers. But right now, there's so much going on with AI. We've got issues with cyber, so much in the technology space. Talk to me a little about technology and how does technology fit into what you do? Are you using AI at all? And what are your thoughts about some of the newer technology opportunities?
Yeah, I would say, just to give a brief history, I would say, Professor, that, actions speak louder than words. For the size of our practice and how we are, I hired on a full-time IT director for how close we want to stay to technology, full-time in the office. I mean, now with the new world, half and half, in the office and half virtual, but having a full-time director of information technology for us always to be able to go out to the next. So that was one thing that really helped us, is that, you could say in that David Goliath, that metaphor we're using earlier, but if you are smaller, you're a lot more nimble, right, doctor? So you can move quicker than the competition in a lot of cases. So we've been able to adopt a first mover advantage or close to it with the planning at the beginning. Well, with efficient market theory at the beginning, to be able to do that, you can't even just think if you were someone at some point in time, Professor, and something, and you say, okay, this is the future, this is the right way to do it. But if you have 5 or 10 or 15 years of legacy clients, products, services, experience, you have a tough time in some cases starting that new avenue today and telling folks, well, that's the greatest way of doing it. And what about these 5 or 10 or 15 years of clients that you have saying, hey, that's not the way that you're doing it for me. So again, being always close to that leading edge of the efficient market theory, of the fee only, of the planning and technology, you said, is a very big part of that. When we did a major technology overlay for our DiNuzzo Financial Wellness Life Plan between 5 and 10 years ago, that was, what I've said for years, people think what we do is all numbers, so to speak, professor. And I said for the longest time, if you've ever heard that old saying about something being part art and part science, so the science of what we do at DiNuzzo Wealth Management, DiNuzzo Private Wealth, the science is numbers. Obviously, there's a lot of numbers of what we do, managing what we do, and we have 100% of most people's wallets, so to speak. But the other 50% is art, and that's behavioral science. That's emotions management. That's literally half of what we do. So we have half of our offering in a behavioral offering as well that can work with our clients, tie into their emotions, to their understanding. Clients come to folks like us and delegate because they don't want to understand efficient frontiers and standard deviations and downside capture rates and all these things of that are involved with managing assets and risk management. They want this explained to them in a common layperson where they can see simple dials, colors, simple to understand graphs, etc. So you did hit the nail on the head. There's been at that leading edge, being nimble enough, having a full-time IT director on staff, have everybody engaged, because, especially professors, you've been a consultant. I say, when you're with a lot of businesses, change is a 4-letter word. You come in, it's a, you're improving, but some people look at, oh, this is just change and I don't like it. And I'm going to hold my breath and dig my feet in. But whenever you get in that frequency of, yes, it's evolving, it's competitive, it's a fluid situation, we're married to technology, we're always looking for best practices to move forward, and to incorporate best practice technology is, I'd say arguably in a tie for number one of our success story last 35 years.
Sure, sure. So I have to ask you about crypto. And what is your take on cryptocurrency?
Well, I guess cryptocurrency. As I said, you vote with your feet, so to speak. So, and as like I said, the old saying, actions speak louder than words. Of the approximate $1 billion we have under management, we don't have any in crypto. Now, we tell our clients, you can take 5% of your overall portfolio, set that aside, and we're showing our bias by how we label that and identify. We call that their Las Vegas account. So you want to take 5% of what you have in Las Vegas account, and you want to trade crypto, whatever else it is. But our entire investment strategy is built off of diversifying away as much risk as possible and investing in what would be referred to as premium. So a classic premium in the market would be stocks have done this for 100 years and bonds have done that. So if you'd like to achieve this higher rate of return, let's just say 9% instead of 3 or 8 instead of 4, whatever it may be. So you can make 3, 4, 5, 6%, maybe more per year over an extended period of time. But do you have the risk profile and the time horizon that you're able to do that? So there's premiums in the market, stocks versus bonds, value stocks historically over growth. Small companies have grown faster than large. High profitability companies have grown faster than low profitability. Now, on the commodity side of any portfolio, there aren't any premiums. So anything commodity oriented would be just for that diversification purpose. Bonds as well. You're doing that to lower the volatility in that portfolio. You're placing bonds, they're government bonds, high quality corporate bonds. So when you get into the cryptocurrencies, there's no embedded or expected premium with that investment. And I'm not denigrating when I say this, but we've been through a couple of fads. And I think years ago there was a baseball card fad. Whenever people were buying baseball cards and buying and selling them, and I'm making $10,000 a year, I'm making big money selling baseball cards. There's no premium involved in that. It depends on the market, supply and demand. Now, I'm not saying it may not make sense for some people to have a small portion as a hedge or as a toehold for the future, but just how we invest, there's no premium available with that. Now, I guess if someone wants to have commodities, it could even be gold or something. They say, hey, I want to have a small percentage out of my portfolio to counterbalance. There's no premium there, but it's a great hedge. It's a great diversification factor. When other things are down, this is something that's going up. The cryptocurrency is sort of the new kid on the block. Not enough there. There's not any factors or premiums that are available investing in it. I don't deny that some people have probably done very well with it. But in our case, the super majority of our clients are retired or pre-retired. So this is their nest egg that has to last them. They've worked for 30 or 40 years, and this has to last them for the next 30 or 40 years. So you need to be very prudent. There's a prudent rule on our part that we're behaving prudently and can have the best answer for anything possible. So in my world, cryptocurrencies would be a very small fraction of someone's portfolio, not to exceed 5%, if even approaching that number. But yeah, we don't delve into that at all. Like I said, actions speak louder than words. We don't own any from the 1 billion we have invested.
Yeah, you base yours on past, and you don't have enough, I guess, history and track record to make that decision, especially for your clients. So
Yeah,
it's very
evidence
interesting.
based.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very
yeah,
interesting. My son is really excited about crypto, and so I've got a little bit invested just to see what
yeah.
happens. But it's a fascinating world, and I think it's fascinating to see, the impact of how the whole the crypto market and politics and the world stage and money in general, currency is changing, and so we live in a very exciting time. And it's as I mentioned earlier, during our careers, yours and mine, we have seen such tremendous change, and much of it driven by technology. But there's always still that human factor, which is what you keep bringing us back to today, which I think is powerful, and what I've spent most of my career looking at too. So you obviously have done an amazing job of developing a strong mindset muscle. I'm going to call it that.
Yeah,
And
mindset.
but I'm guessing that somewhere along the line, you had a failure or a time that you thought about giving up. And so I always like to ask to my guests if they have any kind of a story they would be willing to share for those who are listening out there and might be going through, or some kind of really tough time, or might be afraid of something, just on their horizon. And so do you have a story and maybe some wisdom that you would share about how you've dealt with failure and the feeling of, almost close to giving up kind of
Yeah. Yes, I
experience?
would say failure. And I think just one thing, one sort of addendum I'd like to have, because you brought up a great point, Professor, with cryptocurrency. We do want to always be sensitive to, is something like cryptocurrency that could lead to the next big thing. I'm not saying that it might not be the big thing, but if we think about back to Jeff Bezos, people forget he started off selling books. I mean, it wasn't this
Exactly. I
whole
remember
this whole
that. I
volume.
remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, so he was selling books different than other people, where it's like, hey, you can order these like online. Everything was, you walk into a bookstore. He had a total different model. Then look where he took that model from Amazon Books and where he took that to. So you never would say, hey, I'm gonna project that Amazon Books is going to grow into this behemoth that it has today, but where he went. So I do believe that the cryptocurrency with the underlying technology and everything else can potentially lead into something. So I want to make that point to the audience.
Blockchain. Right, right.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
blockchain, that could be, yeah, how that morphs into another avenue could be the future in a big way. And then with resilience, yeah, as I mentioned, starting off, right whenever we dropped out of college, being under that gun of being $2 million in debt in today's dollars, whenever my brother and I dropped out of college in the late 1970s to help my mom, and into the early 80s, there's a resilience factor. And even I would be lying, even going through periods like 2008, which the bond market, and if we think about bonds melting down, bonds are safer than stocks. And bonds melted down more in 2008 during the financial crisis than they did during the Great Depression. So you're looking at these numbers like, how are bonds holding up? So forget about how stocks melted down back, October 29, all through all that. This is bonds, the fixed income, the market melting down. So there are these times to try your patience and everything else. Now, what I would suggest, from how I coach, is our mind can only be in one of two mindsets. We're either the mindset of creativity or competition. We always want to be in a mindset of creativity, that we're in harmony with the universe. As above, so below. What we send up must be sent back down to us, as far as your dreams, your goals, your prayers, your affirmations, etc. Then we can only be in a mindset, Professor, of abundance or scarcity. And not that it's easy, but if we can stay in that mindset of abundance, you can call it simply, old fashioned would be the glass is half full instead of half empty, but trying to stay through that. And we're all tried. There are times I would not deny that being in business, and you've heard entrepreneurs say this, we entrepreneurs worry about things. We go through tough periods. Am I going to make payroll? Am I going to be able to pay my team members next Monday? I mean, these are real issues. I mean, there are times your revenue goes down 20, 30, 40, 50% beyond something, a bigger picture out of your control. So even if you have a diversified portfolio, if the stock market is down 60 and you're down 20 or 30, you knock 30% of revenues off of any business in a short period of time. These are very challenging. So in a resilience factor, but it's that positive mindset, the positive attitude. And it goes along with a lot of basic building blocks that you would coach and teach also, Professor, that, same thing as we tell our clients. You have a rainy day fund. You have a war chest. With CPAs say, what's your asset test? Your assets versus liabilities, your short-term assets, can they cover? So you do build these things in to help you weather these storms. But I would still get back to, Professor, and I know I looked on a lot of your information when I first heard about you, but I see the word mindset in a lot of different locations as far as your teaching and your instruction and your coaching entrepreneurs. But I would say really it's that mindset that's going to carry you through the day. At the end of the day, having that positive mindset, being in a creative mindset, a mindset of abundance, and also a mindset. I would say one last thing I think on that, Professor, is that it's proven, empirically proven, that I say your mind can only be in. Also, there's another like sort of binary switch, either the mindset of faith or fear. And 95 or maybe even 99% of the time, when a human being is in a mindset of faith, a positive mindset, something's going to work out going forward versus negative versus fear, well over 90% of the time, there's no facts in either case. There's literally no facts. I mean, we as human beings are making a decision. I'm going to be fearful or I'm going to have faith that this is going to work out. No facts. So I just make the case to the audience. Only you can control that. No one else. You only have one thought in your head at a time. No one else can tell you what to think. And I just say, when it comes down to it, always err on the side of faith that things are going to work out. You live in a universe of abundance. There's a buffet out in front of everyone to access health, wealth, happiness, love, relationships, career, whatever it may be. And you have every tool you need inside of you to be able to access that, to manifest anything you can imagine.
What a great message, and what a positive message. I love it. And I could talk a lot longer. I know this has been a great conversation for me, and I've enjoyed it. I've learned a lot. But I really thank you for joining me today, Papi. And I'm curious, you've got how many books now? And tell
6.
us a little about the books for any of our listeners.
Yeah, started off in business with the 7 Keys to Investing Success, DiNuzzo Middle Market Family Office, Don't Get Killed on Taxes, and then switched over to another business book, Building to Scale, that I've collaborated with some other entrepreneurs and business consultants. And then I've got my 5th and 6th book are Manifest Anything You Can Imagine. And also in Spanish, as you know, in Tampa, I run into all of our fellow brothers and sisters, and it's amazing. I was born in Cuba, and they don't speak a whole lot of English. So that was the main reason, actually, is my time in Tampa, that I also did the book in English, in Spanish. So yes, I've got 6 books I've hit number 1 with the books on Barnes & Noble's national and international, number 5 on Wall Street Journal, USA Today's bestseller list, Amazon number 1 nonfiction. And it's my passion to be able to help my fellow brothers and sisters in need. And what I'm able to do now, yes, to keep on helping all these folks in business through wealth planning and everything else, but also now through contacts, even hopefully yourself or not-for-profit organizations that are out there, our fellow brothers and sisters who don't have anything, to be able to go out and talk with them and teach them and help them that they can manifest and have a better life than maybe they ever thought was imaginable by manifesting anything you can imagine.
What a great message. And thank you for the work that you're doing. And thank you for your time today. Where can our listeners connect with you online? And of course, I guess they can buy your books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the obvious places.
Yeah. And a lot of people like the book. A lot of people like Manifest Anything You Can Imagine. It's on Audible. So, and that's in my voice reading the book. And I've got tons of very positive feedback about that. And they can buy their books anywhere. And then just Papi, P-A-P-I, mindsetcoach.com. I send out a lot of free emails and information and coaching tips, and I'm continuing to expand it all the time. So everything I do there is no cost, no obligation. I don't charge anybody anything. Right now, everything is free to all my fellow brothers and sisters to be able to teach them, number one, that they do have these abilities, that the world is friendly. And Albert Einstein, I'll give you one last Einstein quote, but he says, Albert Einstein, to me, one of the top math doctors of all time, said, your life and your success is going to be determined by how you answer a question. And that question is, do you believe that the universe is friendly? Albert Einstein. So I say, yes, it is very friendly. It is ready, willing, and able to embrace all of us out there, our fellow successful entrepreneurs, college students who you're coaching up. And I appreciate you and Professor Ray, because that is our future, all these students that you're coaching up. And but like I said, the universe is friendly, and you do have this power, this creative power within you to manifest anything you can imagine. But pappymindsetcoach.com, sign up. All you need to do is give us your email address. We'll put you on our free list of sending things out to you, and then let you know the different speaking engagements, where I'm at and what I'm up to. So thank you so much, Professor. You're very good at what you do. This is a wonderful conversation today. And thank you for all your contributions to the organizations that you work with and help. They're as long as my shirt sleeve. And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", so that's a long shirt sleeve.
Well, thank you. And thank you for joining me today. It's been a great experience. I've loved it.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like to learn more about entrepreneurship, we would love it if you hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of In Factor.